हाँ,
अपने माइक की बैटरी ठीक से लगा ली है जो भी
फिर
लाई तो ये गई थी ना लाने। मैं सोचा अभी जाता हूँ तब तक ये आ गई।
इतना टाइम?
क्या बोल रहा हूँ?
Yup, saw that.
हाँ होगा कुछ कुछ इवेंट।
अमाल, अपने माइक की बैटरीज बदल लें।
अच्छा।
Are you still being told that eggs are the gold standard for building muscle? For decades, eggs have been marketed as nature's perfect protein. But what if I told you there is a food that is not only cheaper, but can actually stimulate muscle growth more effectively, even if you are in your 70s or 80s? That is what the latest science is showing. And today we are going to unpack it together. Here's why this conversation matters. Muscle is not just about strength or appearance. It is your metabolic engine. It determines how efficiently you burn fat, how stable your blood sugar is, how resistant you are to falls and fractures, and even how long you live. Loss of muscle, what medicine calls sarcopenia, is one of the strongest predictors of disability and early death as we age. And here is the most surprising part. Muscle loss begins as early as our 30s. By the time you reach your 70s or 80s, if you have not been intentional about protecting and rebuilding your muscle, you could be functioning with less than half of what you started with. That is why nutrition choices become more powerful than ever in later decades. Now, eggs are rich in protein and nutrients like choline. No one is denying that. But what the research shows is that protein quality is about more than grams per serving. It is about how efficiently your body can use those amino acids to trigger a process called muscle protein synthesis. Think of this as the switch inside your body that tells your muscles grow, repair, and rebuild. Some foods flip that switch more effectively than others. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your muscles are like a construction site. You need bricks. Yes, that is the protein. But you also need the foreman who tells the workers when to start building. Without that signal, the bricks just sit there in a pile. Certain foods provide both the bricks and the signal, and the research is pointing toward one food in particular, often overlooked, that does this better than eggs and costs a fraction of the price. In this video, I am going to walk you through the science of why this matters, reveal what this food is, and show you how to use it strategically to keep building muscle no matter your age. We will look at studies on amino acid signaling, insulin's role in muscle metabolism, and how even people in their 80s can reverse muscle loss with the right approach. And I will give you practical ways to put this into action today. Because at the end of the day, your muscles are your longevity currency. And with the right knowledge, you can keep adding deposits well into your 80s and beyond. When most people hear the word muscle, they immediately think of bodybuilders or athletes. But here is what is really going on inside your body. Muscle is not just about how you look in the mirror. It is the largest metabolic organ you have. In fact, your skeletal muscle is one of the most powerful regulators of your entire health span. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body as a hybrid car. You have a battery and you have a fuel tank. Your muscles are like the engine that determines how efficiently that energy gets used. The stronger and healthier your muscle is, the more efficiently you burn the fuel. The weaker and smaller your muscle mass, the more that energy gets stored as fat. That is why people who lose muscle as they age often see their waistline expand, their blood sugar climb, and their energy plummet, even if their diet has not dramatically changed. Here's what the research shows. Muscle is the primary site where your body disposes of blood sugar. When you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises. Insulin is released, and it shuttles that sugar into your muscle tissue for use or storage. But if you do not have much muscle, or if the muscle you do have is not metabolically active, your body has nowhere to put that sugar. So instead, it stays in the bloodstream or gets stored as fat in the liver and belly. This is the root cause of insulin resistance, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes. So, When we talk about building and maintaining muscle, it is not just a vanity project. It is literally a survival project. It is the difference between a metabolism that burns sugar efficiently and one that leaves you with constant fatigue, cravings, and weight gain. Now let us talk about longevity. A landmark study published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that older adults with more muscle mass had a significantly lower risk of dying over a 10-year period compared to those with low muscle mass, independent of weight. In other words, having muscle was a stronger predictor of survival than the number on the scale. But here's the problem. Starting in your 30s, you begin to lose about 3 to 8% of your muscle mass every decade. By the time you are in your 70s, the rate of loss accelerates dramatically. This is why so many older adults struggle to get up from a chair, carry groceries, or even walk steadily. It is not just aging, it is preventable muscle decline. And here's the hopeful part. Studies show that even people in their 70s and 80s can build new muscle tissue when they combine the right nutrition with simple resistance training. Your body does not have an age limit on growth. It just needs the right signals. Think of it like a light switch. Your muscle tissue is sitting there waiting for a signal that says repair, grow, strengthen. That signal comes from two places. Number one, the physical stimulus, like lifting a weight, climbing stairs, or using resistance bands. Number two, the nutritional signal, which comes from amino acids, the building blocks of protein. When you put those two together, you flip the switch. That is how you can rebuild muscle, even if you are 80 years old. This is why our conversation today is so critical. If your only focus is on calories or on eating healthy in a vague sense, you can completely miss the importance of targeting muscle. And if you lose muscle, you lose metabolic control, you lose mobility, you lose resilience against disease. But if you preserve and rebuild muscle, you protect yourself against insulin resistance, you burn fat more efficiently, and you age with strength and energy. Now, let me challenge you here. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day, breaking down the science of how to protect your body and extend your health span. Because what you are learning right now is not common knowledge, but it can absolutely change the trajectory of your life. So the first key takeaway is this muscle is not optional. It is not decorative. It is your body's ultimate currency for metabolism and longevity. And in the next section, we are going to bust one of the biggest myths about protein, why eggs, while useful, are not the most efficient way to trigger muscle growth, especially as you get older. For decades, eggs have been put on a pedestal as the perfect protein. You have probably heard the phrase, eggs contain all 9 essential amino acids, so they are the gold standard. And yes, eggs do contain a full spectrum of amino acids. But here's what is really going on inside your body. Not all proteins are created equal when it comes to triggering muscle growth, especially as you age. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine 2 different fire alarms. One is extremely sensitive, just a small wisp of smoke, and it goes off immediately. The other requires a full house fire before it reacts. In your body, different proteins act like different alarms for muscle growth. Some proteins contain a higher amount of a special amino acid called leucine, which is like the smoke detector for muscle protein synthesis. Leucine tells your body it is time to build. Eggs do contain leucine, but here is the catch. The leucine content per serving is relatively modest compared to other protein sources. This means you would need to eat a larger amount of eggs to flip that muscle building switch. And for older adults who may already struggle with appetite or digestion, that is not always realistic. Research backs this up. A study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that older adults need a higher leucine threshold per meal to stimulate muscle growth compared to younger people. In other words, what works in your 20s or 30s does not work as efficiently in your 70s or 80s. Your muscles become more resistant to the anabolic signal, so you need a stronger push. This phenomenon is called anabolic resistance. Now, here is where things get interesting. While eggs provide good nutrition, they may not deliver enough of that anabolic push on their own. This is one reason why so many older adults eat healthy, including eggs, but still lose muscle year after year. They are missing the signal strength. Let us zoom out for a moment. Eggs give you about 6 grams of protein each, with about half a gram of leucine. But the research shows you need about 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine in a single meal to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis in older adults. That means you would need to eat 5 or 6 eggs at once just to hit the threshold. And very few people in their 70s or 80s are going to do that consistently. This is why we have to rethink the eggs are perfect narrative. They are nutritious, yes, but they are not the most efficient tool if your goal is to rebuild muscle later in life. Let me give you a visual analogy. Picture your muscle like a garden. The amino acids are seeds. Eggs provide some seeds, but not enough fertilizer. Without the fertilizer, the seeds will not sprout into a thriving garden. Other foods, which we will reveal in a moment, act as both the seeds and the fertilizer, creating a much stronger growth signal. Another important piece here is digestion. As we age, stomach acid and digestive enzyme production naturally decline. That means older adults may not break down and absorb proteins as effectively as younger people. Eggs are relatively easy to digest, but still, the modest leucine content makes them a weaker trigger under these conditions. So what does this mean practically? It means if you are in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, and you are relying on 1 or 2 eggs at breakfast to cover your protein needs, you are almost certainly underdosing your muscle. Over time, that leads to gradual decline, weaker legs, slower metabolism, more fat storage, and higher risk of falls. Now, I am not